Hey, this is Dead Churn here, lead play tester of Black Magic Labs. If you've ever gotten trouble for playing with your food, well then this deck's for you. Today we're previewing Yum. So, a mechanic people have completely and thoroughly and just so terribly forgotten about because, well, Oko got banned and people are like, well, that deck's not very good no more. It's great. Food is freaking amazing and we should all be playing food because it's awesome. Plus, Korvold, come on now. Korvold, the Fae-Cursed King, is just, premium card. That's why you should play food, even though this deck has been kind of nerfed because we lost some of the cool stuff that you had in War of the Spark. The Mayhem Devil and Priest Forgotten the Gods and those kind of cool sacrifice abilities that we lost, as well as the fact that Oku's no longer a standard card, but that's been a while yet. So we're gonna play food. We're gonna play around my man Korvold. This guy's super sweet commander, but he's really good in standard too, and it's sad that no one's really actually utilizing his insane power. I've seen a couple decks that are slowly starting to put him in there as just like on the back end kind of thing. Escape Rakdos deck has been splashing some green for Korvold, which is nice to see, but there's been no decks I've seen built around him, so we're doing that right here. Korvold is Jund +2 for a 4/4 flying, which is meh, which is fine. It's 5 mana for a flyer, but when he enters the battlefield or attacks, you have to sacrifice another permanent, which, what? I thought we're supposed to get a powerful creature and then have some drawbacks. But there's a big but. There's a bonus to that sacrificing though. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, he's gonna get a 1/1 counter and you're gonna draw a card. So what he really should say is, I'm a 5/5 flyer for 5 mana, and when I enter the battlefield, you sacrifice a creature and draw a card. Because that's essentially what's gonna happen. He's gonna get a counter, become a 5/5, and you're gonna draw a card. So we're gonna play food because food's easy to sacrifice, as well as to do some fun stuff with it. Korvold is going to be our finisher card for this, and he can do some dumb stuff. Super dumb. Like, unbelievably dumb. How are we going to make this deck work? Start over here with Village Rites. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. For 1 black, you draw 2 cards. This card is amazing. Oh my god, this card is amazing. 1 black and a creature, and you get 2 cards? I mean, there's so many just crappy creatures you can throw to Village Rites, and it's a common. This card is awesome. I love Village Rites. This is so black. This is black flavor, and it makes me happy. So we're going to sacrifice our creature. We're going to draw 2 cards. We're generally going to do this when it's targeted with removal or board wipe happens, or when we just want to draw cards, and if Korvold's out, hey, Korvold gets bigger and we draw 3 cards. So we might also combine this with Claim the Firstborn. So for 1 red, we're going to gain control of target creature with converted mana cost. Mana value. That's never gonna not anger me to see mana value instead of converted mana cost. Anyways, with converted mana cost 3 or less until end of turn, untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. So we'll claim one of their guys, be interface with it, and then sacrifice it to the Village Rites and draw some cards. So if your opponent wasn't embarrassed enough to have their own creature attack them, we're gonna then use that creature to give us massive card advantage. Yeah, that's great. This combo is such a great combo. I really like it a lot, and it's just super powerful. A lot of the powerful cards in any aggro deck are going to be 3 or less. And even in mid-range decks, you know, a lot of their powerful cards are going to be 3 or less. If I'm looking at you, Bone Crusher, I'm also looking at Lovestruck Beast. I mean, those are powerful cards. Yes, we may not be able to attack him with the Lovestruck Beast. And the Bone Crusher is going to do 4 damage to us first when we claim it, and secondly when we sacrifice it to the Village Rites. This just takes our opponent's powerful stuff that was cheap and gives it to us for a turn, and then we'll sacrifice it to the Village Rites. We can also sacrifice it to Roast Strider or to Korvold, and we'll talk about the Roast Strider now, I guess. Roast Strider is 2 and a black for a 3/2, which is meh, but when it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 white goat creature token, so he comes along with a goat. That's pretty funny. I think this, like, horror creature that has no face somehow brings along some food with him, a little goat companion. You sacrifice another creature and you scry 1. So the idea is he brings a goat in that you can sacrifice and then scry. He also has Escape, which is pretty nice for 3 and double black. Exile 4 other cards from your graveyard, and then when it escapes, it comes in with 2 counters on it. So for 5 mana, you get a 5/4. That also brings a goat along. I mean, it's not a bad card just on that fact, but the fact that the sacrifice ability costs nothing is really nice, and when we claim their guy, guy, we can, if we don't have village rights or we don't have a Korvold in play or to play, we can then sacrifice it to the Woe Strider after we attacked, which is super sweet. And if we can't claim a guy because its converted mana cost is higher than 3, well, we got the Crowan War. For 3 and a red, this says gain control of target creature for as long as Crowan War remains on the battlefield for the first chapter. The next chapter is going to make all our opponent's creatures attack us on their next turn if able, for each combat they have. And the last chapter is going to say each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. Any of our opponent's creatures that attacked in that don't have vigilance and have toughness less than or equal to their power will be die. That gives us kind of one-sided board wipe. They will get the creature back though that we took with the Crowan War, as it will be untapped because we will have our untap step before our draw step. But we can sacrifice it to the Woe Strider or Korvold or Village Rights before that happens, which is a really nice way of doing it. Take your creature, beat you with it for a turn, and then sacrifice it later while getting a one-sided board wipe is very nice. This card is super sweet and it fits in this deck really well. We are going to also have Croaxa, Titan of Deathsunger. This is how they should have approached the Simic Titan, which has been banned into oblivion in just about every format it's in. I'm looking at you, Euro, Titan of Crap, which is just insanely overpowered magic card. I mean, come on, you draw a card, you put a land onto the battlefield from your hand, and you gain life. You do all the things you ever want to do in Magic. Gain life, card advantage, mana advantage. On a 6/6 body. I mean, insane, ridiculous. Why they thought that was a reasonable Magic card to print, I don't even know. But Croaxa is actually how they should approach it. Croaxa's pretty fair. He's powerful, but he's a fair Magic card. For Rakdos, you get a 6/6. When it enters battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it escapes. That's pretty nice. It's going to come in for 2 mana and says draw a card and put a counter on Korvold, which is pretty nice. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent is going to discard a card. Then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. Essentially what that means if they didn't discard a card or they discarded a land, they're going to lose 3 life. Anything else, they won't lose a life, but they will be down that card. And then double Rakdos, you can escape this by exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard, and then it'll come onto the field and you'll get a permanent 6/6 for as long as your opponents let it stick around. This is going to be a frequent target of removal, but it is super powerful. We're going to strip cards from our opponent's hand. We're going to trigger Korvold. That's all nice and good. So then what is our food package going to look like? Well, Gilded Goose is going to of course be in the deck because not only does it give us a little rampitude, it's going to create food, which is nice. So it's a 0/2 flying for 1 mana, which is actually really good. Blocks 1/1s and flies for some reason. I mean, of course it's a goose, but still a 0/2 flyer for 1 mana is really good. When it enters battlefield, it's going to create a food, and then it can tap and sacrifice food to add 1 mana of any color. So it's going to act as a 1-turn mana dork unless you want to sink some more resources. For 1 in green, you can tap it and you can create a food. This will create food later for either Trail of Crumbs or Wicked Wolf, or to sacrifice to Korvold, because when we attack we do have to sacrifice something, and sacrificing a food is very easy to do because we don't care about the food. Food, of course, it can be 2 and tap it and sacrifice the food and you gain 3 life. So this gives us also life gain against aggro. So this deck, while is a mid-range deck, is well positioned to handle aggro. Control's actually going to be the harder thing, and we got Croaxa and Woe Strider to bring back repeatedly from the graveyard. So it's actually a pretty good deck. I think it is getting way overlooked. We've added a couple cards from Kilheim to the sideboard, but otherwise this is essentially still the same food deck from Throne. I mean, it's just super good. We've kind of tweaked it a little to meet what we think, what our needs are and what I really think makes it work the best. We've also tried playing around with Giant Opportunity, which was a really fun card. You either created 3 foods or you sacrificed 2 foods to get a 7/7 Giant for 3 mana, which was really nice. But the problem was that Giant just got killed. It's a token, so there's too many ways to kill tokens, especially Ugin could just 0 and kill your 7/7, which just was awful. But there was just too many ways to kill it, and it put too much investment in, otherwise gaining 3 food wasn't necessarily good. We took that out, and that's where we added the golden egg instead, which we'll talk about in a second here. But as for Gilded Goose, it ramps us and it creates us some food, which is all nice, and it does some decent blocking. We're going to have a little strained mana system, and golden egg fixes that. It also fixes our aggro problem, and it replaces itself. So for 2 mana of any color, That's too generic right there. We got a card that enters the battlefield, and when it does, we draw a card. Then for 1, we can tap and sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color. So this will do some color filtration to help us smooth out our mana bases, as we do have double black and double red here, double black over here, 1 of every color over here, double green here. So we got double black, double red, and double green. We're all trying to cast in this 3-color deck. This will help smooth that out. And then it's a food itself. So for 2, tap, sack it, gain 3 life. I don't know why these foods needed the tap ability to go with the sack ability. Maybe because they wanted Karn to interact with it, where he shuts down artifact abilities. I don't know. I don't think the tapping part is necessary. I think just 2 sack it would probably be perfectly fine. But maybe there's some other interaction that they wanted it to interact within positively or negatively, or maybe that mechanic made the most sense, as treasures I think do the same thing where they tap and sack. And then also to make some more food, we have Trail of Crumbs. Now Golden Egg does interact with both Gilded Goose and Trail of Crumbs and Wicked Wolf. It's actually pretty nice because it is a food, so it's going to activate. It's going to act with all of those. Trail of Crumbs is 1 in green, and when it enters the battlefield, you're also going to create a food. Whenever you sacrifice a food, you may pay 1. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put that into your hand. The rest go to the bottom of your library in any order. We're playing 6 instants and 5 sorceries. We will be able to almost always at least hit 1 permanent, even if that is just a land, but it will go into our hand, and this will allow us to keep drawing cards. This gives us card advantage and will help against control as well against mid-range and aggro. It's pretty nice little card. I've seen Trail of Crumbs utilized in so many decks in so many different ways, so it's nice to have this card in our food deck. We have Wicked Wolf. Wicked Wolf and Korvold are going to be our food eaters. So we got our food producers, and now these guys are going to eat the food. When Wicked Wolf enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and then you can sacrifice a food to put a 1/1 counter on it and give it indestructible in turn. You will have to tap it. I've noticed Wizards likes this give it indestructible but tap it kind of feature. Maybe it allows your opponents to have more interaction with the card. I remember when Oko was legal, this plus in the Oko deck was just ridiculous. It's really good in this deck. It allows us to remove a creature and pump a creature up. If we have a Gilded Goose, then every turn we can make a food. Every turn we can give that food to the Wicked Wolf, attacking for more and more each turn. You do have to remember that people can respond to the abilities. If they go to Heartless Act it, and you go to put a 1/1 counter on it and give it indestructible, they can then respond with another instant speed kill spell, and that skill spell will happen before your food takes effect. It's always good to store food. That's true in life and in this food deck. So store your food up. Be careful of how you spend your food. Don't get reckless with your Wicked Wolf where you pour all your food into it and then don't have a food for later just because you're trying to push some damage through. Do be aware that it does give 1/1 counters, so you do want to count your food when you attack because you might have lethal on board. Please remember it taps it. I've seen too many times where people play Wicked Wolf and then they sacrifice their food and then go to attacks and go oops because they forgot it taps it. You gotta wait till after you've already attacked with it. That's the main core of the deck. We're gonna check out the lands here. We got 2 swamps, a mountain, and 2 forests. These are gonna be fetchable, of course, with Fabled Passage, which we are running 4 of, which is a little on the greedy side. I do want to be able to sacrifice some lands to Korvold. Evolving Wilds is going to be too much to add on top of Fabled Passage, so we are just going to play the 4 Fabled Passages, and we're only going to have 5 lands to search for. Generally speaking, that is okay. We want to make sure our colors are perfect as can be. We're going to play 3 of the Blight Step Pathway flip lands, 3 of the Dark Boar Pathway flip lands, and then 4 of the Crag Crown Pathway flip lands. We're going to have more red and more green in the deck than black, so we're going to take 4 of these and 3 of each of these. 1 Temple of Malady. This temple could be a Dark Boar Pathway flip land if you so desire. I like having the Scry ability as well as a true dual land so that you can actually either cast your double black or double green. Since we don't need double black or double green together, we do need double black and double red together for this one. This one does allow us that versatility to go green or black. If you wanted, or you're having more trouble with the mana base, you can shrink some of these flip lands down to some more of these scry lands. Generally speaking, we're going to want to cast a turn 1 spell, a turn 2 spell, and then into a turns 3 and 4 and then 5. So we don't really want to have a lot of tap lands. Turn 1 is okay to have a couple tap lands, but we don't want that many, and we are playing 4 Fabled Passage, which if any turn before turn 4 are going to be tap lands, and we have of course some of these spell tap lands. So we got Malakir Rebirth. This card is super sweet, especially if they go to kill Korvold. Yes, he's going to lose all his counters, or Wicked Wolf, and we don't have any food, they will lose their counters. But it will be able to re-enter the battlefield. So we're going to choose target creature. We're going to lose 2 life, and until end of turn, that creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Make sure you do your math, because this is instant, and sometimes you're just going to die if you lose the 2 life and then take the damage from combat. So always do your math, people. Math is important in Magic as well as in life. You don't have to have super complicated math, but basic addition and subtraction is necessary. So do your math before you use the spell. 2 seems nice. I've tried as high as 4, and it just was too many tap lands, so we've gone down to 2. 2 seems to be the sweet spot. We're going to have a 1 of Agadium's Awakening. This is a bolt land on the flip side. Otherwise, it's triple black and X, and then you're going to return any number of target creatures to the battlefield that each have a different current mana cost of X or less. So we're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So if we have 8 mana, we can go all the way up the chain, which is really nice actually. Croaxa, of course, will go back to the graveyard because he was not escaped, but we can get a Goose back, we can get Croaxa, we can get Wolfstrider and Wicked Wolf, as well as Korvold. We can't sink a whole lot into having multiple copies of this, as the mana base is a little stretched, and we are only playing 23 lands because we don't really need that many lands, and the Goose is going to ramp us. For the sideboard is pretty straightforward. We're going to have 4 Agonizing Remorse to strip some stuff from control, as well as deal with some of the ultimatum decks or other decks that are going to play powerful late game spells that we want to strip from their hand before they can do it, as well as maybe strip some stuff from the graveyard against the escape deck. 3 Heroic Interventions. This is going to help us against control as well as other targeted removal. We can either do this to protect 1 creature or protect all our creatures from a board wipe. Extinction Events times 4. This is going to help us against aggro, because sometimes the aggro is just too aggro and we're not going to be able to hit our cards good enough. Croaxa is kind of dead against aggro, so we can bring in Extinction Event and make sure we have a board wipe, and Extinction Event's pretty good board wipe in black. And then of course Binding of the Old Gods, as we only have creature removal between Claim the Firstborn and a Crone War, and then sacrificing them to one of our 3 sack outlets. We don't really have any other non-creature removals, so Binding of the Old Gods is going to take care of that. We'll take out the Crone War if we need to destroy non-creature targets. Whatever's bad, we'll take out, and we'll put in Binding of the Old Gods if we have non-creature targets to take out. So that's the deck. It's a lot of fun. Playing with your food can be a lot of fun, and this deck really proves it. So we'll see how she plays. As always, like, share, and subscribe if you like this video. Also, please consider supporting Black Magic Labs on Patreon. Thanks.